What do you do for a living?
Engineering
Oh, where?
at an architectural firm in Wyoming.
Oh, okay. That makes you fit for this, right?
I can understand this stuff.
Good.
I'm still getting used to the ins and outs as far as some things I didn't expect within the planning commission, and I like it a lot.
Others are skilled like you are in the technical details. For me, it's more.
Pete, you got us turned on?
Are you recording? Okay.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jim Kozlowski. I'll be acting as chair this evening. Our regular chair is out for the evening, and so I'll be taking over. It's the first opportunity for me to, as vice chair, to chair the meeting, so I'd like to welcome all of you to tonight's meeting. I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting together tonight, Tuesday, February 23rd, or 28th, 2023, at 6:30 p.m. The first order of business is to approve the agenda. Have a motion?
I'll move.
Second?
Motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thanks. Next item on the agenda is to approve the consent agenda, and I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda. There are two items under that, A and B.
So move.
There's a motion,
I'll second.
support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. All right, now's the time for public comment. If you're here for the public hearing later on, you can save those remarks for that portion of the meeting. Anybody else is welcome to come up at this time for public comment. If you do, you come to the podium, state your name and your address, and any comments you might have. Okay, thank you. All right, agenda item number 5, agenda items. First item on the, under agenda items is a PUD amendment and soil removal permit. And with that, I'd ask Brian to read the applicant information.
This is, project name is Plainfield Gravel and Sand Pit. The applicant is Mr. Michael Roush of Roush Trucking. Project address 4640 and 4672 Coit Avenue Northeast. Permanent parcel number 41-10-29-400-019 and 41-10-29-400-005. Size of site approximately 85 acres. Action requested of the Planning Commission, provide a recommendation to the Township Board for an amendment to the PUD and soil removal permit to extend mining operations. And on a side note, Peter, my screen is not working in front of me, nor is.
There should be a button on your screen.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay, this item has been on the agenda at least 3 times before. It's been under postponement twice on the agenda. And with that, I'd like staff, Pete, if you have any updates to what we've already covered before we take action tonight.
Sure. As you may recall, last meeting, this specific request was split into 2 items. One was a minor amendment that was forwarded to the Township Board to permit mining from the date the board would approve it till July 1st of 2023. The board reviewed that. They did table or postpone that item at that meeting for further information. It'll probably coincide, the next time they hear that, it'll be probably coincide when this particular project, if this particular project moves forward to the Township Board. In addition to that, I would like to introduce Mr. Jeff Sluggett from Bloom and Sluggett. He is here representing Cliff tonight because Cliff had more important things to do, he said. No, just kidding. But Jeff has some comments for you. There are some minor changes to the documents we've adjusted, and we did do the work that we've talked to you about last time. And that is all I have for you at the moment. So Jeff, you want to?
Please.
Jeff Sluggett, here on behalf of the Township Attorney's Office. In the packet that Pete had distributed this evening, there are 3 separate documents, as I know you're aware. Restrictive covenant agreement, a soil removal permit, and a PUD ordinance. If you've read through them, and I'm guessing you have, you've noted it's fairly complicated. There's many layers, and to some extent, they interlap one another so that dates in one ought to match the others. In the course of looking at the document today, I found one instance where that's not the case, and I want to bring it to your attention. In the PUD ordinance, item 4, which is on at least the draft I'm looking at, it's a red line, so I'm not sure if this is the same for you, but it's the general reclamation deadline. And the date shown, at least in the copy that I have, is December 31, 2031. That's incorrect. It should be December 31, 2030. And that then ties into the dates that are already contained in the soil removal permit and the restrictive covenant agreement. The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention was, I know if the inclination of the Planning Commission is to move this forward with a positive recommendation to the Township Board, I know that there was proposed language that was submitted to you. Again, unfortunately, there's a couple wrong dates in there, so my suggestion is, and it's only, we can put the correct dates in there, or we can simply refer to the various documents that already have these dates, and that's my suggestion for simplicity. So with that, let me read what I'm going to suggest would be a proposed amendment to this language, if you're inclined to approve it. And that would be for subsections A, B, and C under the suggested motion for approval, which talk about when the mining has to be complete, when site reclamation has to be complete, and when the existing stockpiles need to be removed. Rather than rely, I would recommend we strike the dates that are in those 3, and in its place, add language essentially as follows: consistent with the restrictive covenant agreement, soil removal permit, and PUD ordinance as revised and amended at tonight's meeting. So that we're basically just bootstrapping in the 3 documents and using those rather than the language that's in this proposed motion. And with that, I would be more than glad to answer any questions if I can.
Any questions of the commission?
Pete, I guess, are you, or is the township okay with the wording to use for a motion, or do we need to discuss that?
Yes, we're comfortable, as long as you can take what Jeff proposed, was in there, and just flip that out for item number, was it 4?
Well, it's item, right, so there's the amendment to the PUD ordinance, item 4, and then the proposed change to the motion, approval language if you're inclined to adopt that motion.
Yeah, what happens is we're going through 4 different documents with this, trying to change the dates on 4 different documents and keep them consistent, so what Jeff is suggesting is we just take in the motion itself, take those dates out and just refer to the controlling documents. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question, or do you need additional info?
No, as long as the township's in agreement with, if we move forward the way that's worded.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Okay, let's open it up. Brian, do you have anything further? Questions, comments?
I don't at this time, no. I think, based on what we have talked about before, I'm comfortable with where we're at.
Nancy, do you have anything?
I'll be abstaining from this issue for this week, or this month.
Jack?
No, I think the documents perfectly reflect what we had discussed, and I have no problem with them.
Dennis?
I'm comfortable with the documents closed, so.
Robin, you had some questions about your review?
My only questions were whether or not the time periods and the amount of work included in each time period were actual amounts. I mean, they seem pretty steep to me, 24 trucks a day for however many months in order to clear the 510,000 cubic yards. That seems to be a pretty steep order to me. But you're the trucking firm, so I would go by your recommendation.
Okay. I don't have anything more, so at this time I would take a motion. I believe there's actually two motions here. Are we still gonna be dealing with the extension motion, or is that been waived?
You mean the one to extend mining to the July 1st? That's been waived. You do not need to address that.
All right. We'll take a motion at this time.
I move that the Planning Commission recommend to the Township Board the modified approval of the PUD amendment requested by applicant Roushey JM Development LLC to extend the mining and reclamation deadline for the mining operation commonly referred to as the Plainfield Gravel and Sand Pit, subject to the following, I guess those first three wording using the supporting documents with the dates in those documents, and then that the draft PUD ordinance amended document be adopted by the Township Board and agreed to by the applicant, and that the applicant execute the document entitled Restrictive Covenant Agreement upon approval of the PUD ordinance amendment by the Township Board, and that the fully executed document be recorded with the Kent County Register of Deeds records.
Do I have a support? Okay, anything else? If not, all those in, yes.
Just for the record, the motion includes that change to the PUD item 4, the PUD ordinance, item 4, to change the date from December 31, 2031 to December 31, 2030.
Yeah, using the dates in the supporting documents. Yes.
So noted. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for your patience. All right, item B on the agenda tonight is non-conforming use review and site plan approval. Brian, do you want to read the applicant information, please?
Second to appear here on the board. Peter? The document, so I can read the.
My rookie night for handling the layout on this.
Actually, I've got it right here. Project name is Enterprise Rental Car, or Car Rental. Applicant is Enterprise Leasing Company. Project address 3867 West River Drive. Permanent parcel number 41-10-31-305-011. Size of site 0.4 acres. Zoning VC, which is Village Commercial. Project description and action requested to allow a non-conforming use and grant site plan approval.
Brian, with that, I'll let staff. Peter, you have any comments to introduce this? And
Sure. As you may recall, this location was a auto repair and auto sales and service shop for a number of years. And over the years, the township is, we came back about maybe a decade ago with the village commercial zoning, which made this use non-conforming, and has been a non-conforming use since then. And what you're seeing before you now is another non-conforming use proposed to go into the site. That is permissible by ordinance if the planning commission finds it meets 3 different standards, which I can go into later. But I don't want to delay too much on this because these folks have brought a presentation for you tonight, and they would like to show that to you here shortly. And then if you want to ask or had me field any questions after that, I'd be happy to do so.
name or names and addresses, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Becca Ditto. I'm a facilities and construction manager with Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Address is 29301 Grand River Avenue, Farmington Hills, Michigan. A little far from home tonight. Oh, sure, of course.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
We're just gonna do slideshow.
Perfect.
Beginning. Did it go?
Oh, there it goes.
Okay, thank you so much for that slight delay, and I definitely want to thank you all for having us tonight to talk about this opportunity to beautify this piece of property in your community. So I just want to take a little minute to talk a little bit about Enterprise Holdings if you're not familiar with our company. Enterprise Holdings, we have many subsidies that we own between Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Alamo Rent-A-Car, and National Car Rental. We have a car sales division, a car share division, Enterprise Truck Rental, Commute, Car Club, Exotic Cars, Flex Rent, and Subscribe. So we're a pretty large company across the country and across the world as well. Next slide. Oh, did it come up? The slideshow is not working. Am I doing something wrong here? Let's see.
Is there a start show somewhere?
Yeah. Slideshow. Sorry, everybody. We're not off to a stellar start, are we?
Doesn't seem to be following.
It doesn't seem, well, that's okay. I can still just talk. Some other things you may not know about us is that we report $23.9 billion in annual revenue. We staff more than 10,000 employees across the entire world. We are the 12th largest privately owned rental car company, according to Forbes. We are in 90-plus countries and territories. We have more than 1.85 million vehicles on the road. I'm sorry, that was wrong about the 10,000. 75,000 employees? No, it went away. Okay. Nationwide, we also are if public, we would rank 121st in the Fortune 500. Now up here, I know it's not up here on the screen, but what I do want to just show everybody here real quick, and I don't know how well everybody can see it. This is a rendering of the existing building and what we propose to do to this building to renovate that. Okay. Is it now? Oh, there we go, up on the screen. New paint, any repairs to, windows, etc. Some new signage. Definitely some improvements to the existing site, as I'm sure that you're aware. And really, that's what we wanted to show to you. I'm sorry this PowerPoint's not really working here, but that really is the gist of it. I wanted to get up here and tell you a little bit about the company. If you didn't have that knowledge about us, know that when we invest in a community, we invest for 20 plus years. We have some locations we've been at for 30 plus years. So when we invest in a property, we intend for the long term. We don't invest for a short term, 3-5 years and then run. We make 20 years worth of investments to a piece of property, and we intend to be a partner in that community for a very long time. So again, thank you for having us tonight. Thank you for considering us for tonight. And hopefully we will receive approval, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Peter?
Yeah. I just wanted to add to this site a little bit in regards to the site plan, and especially in the motion. There are two motions here tonight on the table. The first is to consider the transfer of the non-conforming right to Enterprise, but the second thing would be site plan. If you are not inclined to approve the transfer of use, there's no reason to consider the site plan, but, in regard to the non-conforming use, so there's a couple things that have come up that make this sort of a unique situation, and I want to lay those out there. First one is this site does have contamination on it. We've seen a report from about a decade or so ago indicating that was probably from the former users as a gas station, which is not uncommon. To reuse the site, there's challenges with that. We've run into that in other locations. The city of Grand Rapids runs into it with those old gas stations too, when you take up pavement and that kind of thing. So they have suggested here, rather than doing our standard landscaping that we normally run into, they were gonna do planter boxes and things like that. Township staff is excited to see the reinvestment here. We have reviewed, and we had the township engineer review the environmental review. There's some more work that needs to be done, but the applicant is agreeable to working with us to take a look at it. And that's something to do with like making sure that the drain in there is properly hooked up to the sanitary sewer system, that the septic system was properly abandoned. Does the interior of the building have anything to be concerned about? I will note too, and just for the public and just general, they're not proposing a dumpster on this site. We, staff-wise, have always seen dumpsters show up a year later. One of the problems we run into is if they're not secured behind a gate or something, they tend to blow, debris all over the neighborhood. So with every one of these site plans now, we're requiring dumpsters, if they come in the future, to be gated and enclosed. And so that's a precautionary thing. The last one is, and I have talked with the applicant and the applicant's engineer, there's a big wide curb cut there. We're looking to close one down. We do have to have some discussions with the Kent County Road Commission in greater detail to do that. We're comfortable with that moving forward. So those are the main topics I wanted to touch base with you on. So if you have any additional questions, please let me know.
Jack, do you have anything?
First of all, I'm pleased that you're coming into Comstock Park. I would assume also that the Comstock Park DDA will welcome you, although I don't know that anyone here is from them. One personal question, what is car share?
Car share is, a good example would be college campuses, where you have a car that is at one end of the campus that's shared by multiple facilities staff to drive from one side to the other side of the campus without having to use their personal car, without having to use any transportation within their campus. So it's a shared car for a corporate or school facility and the like.
Yeah, that's all I had.
I'm happy to see you come into the neighborhood as well. When it comes to the materials on the building, you talk about paint, but it looks like there's a different facade being added to it. What is the predicted end result of the?
Well, it was just going to be, that's just a standard rendering that our marketing department does. But we would do paint, and the sign at the top, we would, is just a standard box sign with a decal across the window. We wouldn't paint the roof. It wouldn't look exactly like that building, but that gives you a good idea of what we'd be looking to do to beautify the property.
Okay. That's all I had.
I lived within 2 blocks of one of these when I lived on Monroe downtown. And I tell you that at 7 in the morning, the waiting room was full of people, and it got high use, and it was extremely appreciated in the community. So I have to say that it's great to see one here. It improves the walkability of our community, and it's a great resource.
Nancy?
I'm curious, is there any risk or concern about additional contamination to the site with this work?
I'm going to go ahead and defer to Andy from our engineering firm.
Good evening, I'm Andy Brooks with Clean Engineering, 108 East Savage, Spring Lake, Michigan. So they are proposing new drains inside the overhead bays there. And as part of any building permit and its standard plumbing code, all those new drains need to hook up to the sanitary sewer. So that's the intent. So the idea is that we're not going to exacerbate any of the contamination on site, and then any contamination that's run into inside the building will be remediated in accordance with like a due care plan or with the building permit. So.
One other question. I know there's a similar enterprise facility on Plainfield, which doesn't seem too terribly far away. Is there any concern about how close your places are to one another? Is there business for this, I guess?
There is business for this. So here at Enterprise, You know, we run our fleets at a very high utilization. So you might have a location that has 500 cars that they're managing, but our local communities wouldn't know that. They wouldn't see more than 5 to 10 cars on there, because we want to be able to get those cars out to our communities to be able to service our customers. And we have teams of drivers, and that's all they do. All day is just drive cars around our local cities to get those cars where they do have the reservations. So no, we don't foresee that to be a challenge for us.
That's all.
Brian?
I guess, Peter, I go back to the no dumpster. Every building creates trash. If you found a way not to, spread the word, please.
I would.
So I think that probably should be incorporated into any kind of site plan, because trash is gonna have to go somewhere other than under somebody's desk. So that would just be a concern of mine. And Peter, did I remember 15 cars? Is that what the
Yes,
number
sir.
was? And
Yes.
there's room for that comfortably on this lot? I know it's a small lot and we're landlocked all
It'll
the
be
way
tight,
around.
but yes, there's room for that. After working with the applicant, they've indicated that. And I do think there's a lot of come and go with that relationship too.
Yeah, and that goes back to our high utilization, so we wouldn't keep any more cars on a lot than we could hold, and we've committed to that 15 so that we can be a good, you know, member of the community and to our neighbors, and that's what we would strive to, would be no more than that.
You don't see any, I mean, is there like a busy time where you have more traffic? And I know that lot, that whole area, Vitale's across the street, and that it can be hard getting in and out of there because that's an unusual intersection. You don't foresee any problems or issues with that, safety concerns?
Understandable. No, because with our utilization and the programs that we use, we're able to time our reservations to the times the customers are returning. So in most cases, it's a 1-for-1. So we really shouldn't have a funnel where we have more cars than we have customers with for.
And people do not leave their cars there? Okay, so it's not I wanted to borrow a car for the weekend, I drive my car there and leave it. It will be just your cars on the lot,
Our cars are, or our employee cars.
or somebody being dropped off.
That's correct, yes. We do not assume responsibility for anyone who leaves their car on their lot, so we do not permit our customers to do that.
Will there, I mean, I know this is just a rendering. The top picture of the way it is right now, the cement looks like it's in rather poor condition. Will there be any work on the parking lot material? I'm assuming that's cement.
So, yeah, it's probably asphalt overlaid, or cement overlaid with asphalt. The goal would be to crack, seal, and restripe the parking lot, and then I believe in the scope of work, there is some money in there to remove and replace some of the sidewalk out and around the building, and then possibly, I believe, get rid of some of those raised areas. So, but that is kind of tied to the building budget, so.
And it's not uncommon to put an asphalt cap over a concrete parking lot, especially in this situation.
Sure.
Will there be car repair being done there in those two stalls? What will those two stalls be used for then?
Clean our cars, so inside those bays, we bucket wash, so no different than you might do in your driveway with a bucket of soap and a scrub brush. And we detail the inside of our cars, glass cleaner, a multi-purpose cleaner, vacuum, power washer, all standard compliant equipment, but no vehicle repair whatsoever.
Where's all repairs done then?
They're outsourced to the local businesses in the community.
Okay, nice. That's all I have.
Okay.
There's more than that.
Peter, back to you for anything else?
I have no additional comments.
At this time then, I'll take a motion in favor of a non-conforming use transfer.
I move that the Planning Commission approve the change in use from a non-conforming use auto sales facility to a non-conforming auto rental facility, subject to the following conditions of approval. Number one, the applicant shall comply with the requirements of the auto rental facility as outlined in section 29.08 of the Township zoning ordinance. Number two, the applicant shall provide the township with further documentation on the environmental contamination on site, including further site analysis and plans for remediation prior to the issuance of a remodeling building permit. And number 3, the applicant shall close the southern curb cut on site, subject to the approval of the Kent County Road Commission and Community Development Department.
Thank you, Jack. All those in favor of the motion signify.
We need a second.
Second.
Oh, second, there we go. Thank you. I'm a rookie at this tonight. Now then, now that we have a second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, that motion carried. Now that we've got an approved non-conforming use transfer, we need to do site plan review and approval. Is there a motion in favor of site plan?
I move that the Planning Commission approve the site plan for the remodel of the existing facilities at 3867 West River Drive Northeast as shown on the site plan dated January 24th, 2023.
Second?
Support.
Support? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried.
On a quick side note, what kind of deadline are we, I mean, once you get approval from the board, is it, what do you see as a?
How quickly can I apply for a building permit?
So you're looking to move rather quickly
Yes,
on
sir.
this?
We're
Okay.
looking to waste no time. So as
Okay.
soon as we can apply
Interesting.
for a building permit, we'll be looking to move this project forward as quickly as possible. Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to agenda item C, site plan review for Mill Creek Avenue. Brian, you want to read the applicant's information?
Project name is Rebuild 3658 Mill Creek Drive. Applicant West Properties, Inc. Project address 3658 Mill Creek Drive. Permanent parcel number 41-10-31-358-038. Site, size of site approximately 1.1 acres. Zoning is I, industrial. Project description and action requested to grant site plan approval for 12,880 square foot building.
Peter?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, a lot going on with this site. As you may recall, the GLF Petroleum was in the building earlier this year, or last year, I guess at this point, and it burned and it shut down the southbound lane of 131 back in the day. Since that time, they've pulled demolition permit, and I believe the structure is gone at this point. So they're planning on rebuilding with this application. Now, there are some challenges to this site. It's an old developed site. And the building is in a floodplain, as well as the setback. It's a non-conforming structure, or was a non-conforming structure until it was destroyed. So they will be seeking a variance, so they can reuse the existing foundation. That variance would have to be so essentially the site plan you're looking at tonight, the zoning board of appeals will be considering in March, and if they approve it, they can move forward with it. If the zoning board of appeals were to say no, I'm still comfortable with them granting site plan approval tonight if you're so inclined, because administratively, we can work with them to relocate the building a few feet per the administrative standards built into the ordinance. So, moving forward, we'll see what happens with that, but there's still plenty of room for them to work, but they may have to reduce the size of the building if it doesn't go the way they would like. Moving on to this one, there are no sidewalks on the site, but since this is a rebuild of the entire site, they are required to pay into the sidewalk payment in lieu or build a sidewalk. It'd be a bit challenging on this particular instance with this basically all paved between them and the neighbors, but we can work with them on that. A big one is the fire department wants a water main extension, and I believe Mike Hausman or Justin Longstreth is here tonight to talk a bit more about that, but there will be a second hydrant put on there for greater fire security, which also requires extension of a water line and an easement, if I understand correctly. Sanitary sewer is manageable, but I'll be straight up with you, it is a bit of a moving target right at the moment. They are on a septic system. That septic system may well have been damaged by the fire, as well as backup flooding from the drain that's along US 131. At least that's my understanding of that. So once the water is drained out and the water table is down a little bit, they're gonna test that drain, or that drain field, the system, to see if it's viable. If it's not, the applicant is either looking at a pump and haul system, which in my experience is generally not worth it. But they also have another alternative of extending sanitary sewer via force main and a grinder pump to lift the sanitary sewer up. But there are options there. Sewer is reasonably available to them. Well, maybe not reasonably in terms of cost, but it's available. So, stormwater, in this case, is fairly easy because it's going right into the drain. It's already established out there. Loading docks and the like. I think there's some parking challenges. I know that the applicant is still kind of playing around with how they want to do the final layout of all the loading docks and doors on there. So there's plenty of room for parking, but the layout needs a little bit of tweaking as we go forward. I've discussed that with them. They're willing to meet me on site. We'll sit down once we kind of get the final elevations determined on the building design and kind of lay out a revised parking layout. They have plenty of parking numbers for the uses that typically go in there, but we need to lay them out better, I think. Landscaping, at the time of this report, we had not had a landscaping plan. I got it, they dropped it off at the last minute. I was able to get it into the packet for the meeting, but his staff report does not reflect that. We are willing, given the limitations of the site, to work with the applicant on clustering landscaping to make it look nice and fill in where we can. You've got Bauma next door. I think they have a fence along the perimeter, so there's some challenges there. And then as well as you got the floodplain and a drain. Again, we like what they've put on there. It does need some tweaks. We're happy to work with the applicant. And that is reflected as a condition of approval, as well as the dumpster. So bottom line, there's a lot of conditions here. Those conditions we're all comfortable with after we're talking to the applicant, and we think they're very manageable. So if you have any questions beyond that, please let me know.
The applicant wish to address the commission.
Good evening. My name is Justin Longstreth with Moore and Brugink Engineers here tonight representing the applicant. Otherwise, this would be a fairly straightforward multi-tenant light industrial building. But like Pete had alluded to, there are some challenges. We are working through all of those. We've reviewed the staff review letters, the comments, and we're comfortable with all of those. But just maybe a couple things that I'd like to point out. So as far as the variance is concerned, the reason that we're seeking a variance is while the structure was mostly destroyed in the fire, the foundations are still structurally sound, and the proposed building is planning to reutilize those existing foundations. So we're essentially setting the new building right on the footprint of the old, and because it was a non-conforming use, building foundations in the setbacks, that's why we're working with the Board of Zoning Appeals for the variance. So Pete's right, if the zoning board does not agree with what it is, a portion of those existing foundations will have to come out, but we're hopeful that that's not the case. As far as water main is concerned, we are bringing a new fire protection line into this building. And on the way from where it is currently to the new building, we are adding one additional hydrant. That was a conversation that we had with the fire department. So that will happen. As far as the septic is concerned, we have had conversations with the drain, or the health department. There are some seasonal limitations that we're up against right now, but we do plan on fully investigating the site and confirming that the existing septic is viable. If it's not, again, there are options, but we do need to step through those steps with the health department first. And then lastly, this is a multi-tenant building. There aren't any tenants signed up yet. And so as regards to parking, we certainly are open to meeting with staff on site to rearrange parking. But until we know actually who's going to be in this building, I think we're pretty comfortable with the layout that we have. So if there's any other questions, I'd gladly answer those.
Questions? Okay, I'll turn to the commissioners for further comments. Dennis?
I have no comments.
Jack?
Well, I think the word of the day is accommodation. Seems like you guys are doing a lot to accommodate. Considering the location and what you have to work with. I'm happy that you're restoring this and working with it.
Robin?
I have no questions.
Brian?
How many tenants do you sort of foresee in this? I mean, are you building it in a certain format with, 2, 3, 4, 5? I mean, it's not a real big building.
Manuel Silser, I'm the project manager for Wolverine Building Group. As of now, it's going to be a spec building. It's going to be just a big empty space. So there is not going to be any suites. It's just going to be a spec building. So it could be one tenant, it could be two. We don't know that yet. But as of now, it's just one space. That's what we have planned.
But you're thinking maybe 2 or 2 at the most, 3? I mean, it sort of depends on what, okay.
Yeah, I think probably it could be one, no more than 2 is what we think.
The reason I asked Peter is just, again, going back to the parking issue, if we sort of, have an idea, make sure that the parking's gonna work before it's too late.
The building cannot accommodate a large shift of workers, but it's not generally designed for that. But yes, there are some limitations.
I think that's all the questions I have.
Kind of expanding on that, if it does end up being a multi-tenant unit, is there a chance for like future additional build out and changes to the space based on those tenant needs that we would have to revisit?
As of now, I don't think so. So in the way that we have labeled the building, is a basic spec industrial building. So if the tenant or the owner of the building is going to have a different use, we will need to request a different use and different occupancy for the building. So as of now, it's not labeled like that. So the building permit is going to go straight forward as it is.
Okay, anything else, anybody? Nope. Okay, at this time, I'll take a motion to grant site plan approval.
Well, I guess I'll take a crack at it. Seems like all the long ones I get. I move that the Planning Commission grant site plan approval for a 12,800 square foot industrial building subject to the following conditions. Number 1, if the applicant is not granted a variance by the Zoning Board of Appeals for the setback from the west side property line, the proposed building shall be reduced in size or redesigned to comply with the required minimum setback, subject to approval by the Community Development Department. Number 2, the applicant shall receive approval from the Kent County Health Department for the septic system or connect to public sanitary sewer prior to issuance of an occupancy permit. Number 3, the applicant shall provide an updated landscaping and photometric plan for approval by the Community Development Department prior to the issuance of a building permit. Number 4, the applicant shall provide water main easement subject to the approval of the Community Development Department. Number 5, the applicant shall extend the water main and provide an additional fire hydrant subject to the approval of the Township Fire Department. Number 6, if a dumpster is installed in the future, it shall be enclosed and gated with a location subject to approval by the Community Development Department. And number 7, the applicant shall provide revised building elevation showing design elements along the northeasterly and east end of the building for approval by the Community Development Department prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Thank you, Jack. Is there support?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Item D on the agenda tonight is a PUD rezone and includes a public hearing. I'd like to note we've received 2 written comments and communications that we will be incorporated into the public hearing record. One of those was received from Art Spalding, and the other from a township resident, Joseph Biggerstaff. And we'll incorporate those by mention. At this time, Brian, would you read the applicant information?
Sure. Project name, Jupiter Condominiums rezone. Applicant Redstone Properties, project address 2306 Conkle Drive. It's the southwest corner of West River Drive and Jupiter Avenue. Permanent parcel number 41-10-21-426-005. Size of site 13.97 acres. Zoning RP, which is rural preserve. Project description and action requested to provide a recommendation to the Township Board to rezone the subject property from rural preserve to R3 to planned unit development to allow a residential development consisting of 38 condominium units.
Brian, before I open the public hearing, Peter, is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, just a bit of background. You considered this, I think, over a year ago, perhaps, in preliminary discussion. You had some concerns in general about the floodplain and the impact it would have on flood levels. We have directed the applicant to address those as best they can. I think in the narrative, they've elaborated what they've done or what they can do to do so. I do believe the number of units has been reduced since that initial discussion also. What you see in front of you would be the result of rezoning this property from rural preserve, which really allows one house per 120,000 square feet, to R3, which is about, if I remember right, 10 units per acre in that range. And that is our high-density residential development where you will see apartments and townhomes and mixed-use type of development primarily. In part, that's, they have to do that to accommodate this land to make it developable because they have to dig so much out or cut and fill, which I can elaborate on later, and raise a portion of the property at the northeasterly corner to get that out of the floodplain. So tonight, staff has not provided a recommendation. There is a lot to digest in this particular process here, a lot to consider. We want to get some direction from you before we prepare that statement, and then at the next meeting, we're hoping you would postpone it to then, and then we'd have that ordinance to amend and motion prepared for you for or against at that meeting. So for the moment, I'll leave it as is, but if you have any questions for me in the meantime, let me know.
Applicant wish to address the commission?
Good evening. My name's Rob Lamer. I'm with XL Engineering. I'm happy to be here and to talk about this site. I've been involved with the site for quite some time. It's started back when it was going to be office complex type of thing here. I think it was like 2005 or sometime in that area. I'm an engineer. My favorite subject is rain and water and how to control it and to understand floodplains. This is one of those areas when Jupiter Bridge was built that the floodway of the Grand River changed because the abutments of the Jupiter pushed the floodway in. And that opened up the ability for this boathouse to happen and this development, which before was going to be office complexes back in 2005. So I analyzed the Grand River, determined the floodplain, worked with the DNR, I think, or DEQ at the time. Now it's EGLE. And we, with Bruce Minnering and I, Bruce worked for the DEQ, came up with where the floodway was and how the floodplain would be affected by this. I think that it's very important to understand that there is no way that I or the EGLE would ever approve anything here that would raise the floodplain, because that isn't right. We cannot raise the floodplain for anyone. So let me explain a little bit about how floodplains work, because I think it's very important when you analyze this that you understand that. So when I do a work in a floodplain, anything that I fill in the floodplain takes up volume for eventually a storm, right? So in order to make that not raise the floodplain, I have to do an equal amount of cut in the floodplain. So when you take your fill and you put it in the upland area, you're also digging a cutout area that will flood more than what it does today because you're removing dirt from the floodplain. So if you look around Plainfield Township, Waterford condominiums, I designed those. Some of that stuff was even in the floodway. All of Versluis Lake, the preserve condos a little bit, some of the stuff downstream. It's been happening a lot in Plainfield Township where we work with the EGLE and we get approval to work in the floodplain. Now, how does that help? Here's the deal. Because of what we're doing here, you're gonna probably, you won't see it, but it does it. The floodplain actually kind of goes down a fuzz. Not much, but I'm talking like half an inch by the time you do that compensating cut. The reason for that is, with this area down here, we'll see floods now with smaller rain events because it's lower. So then the river upstream for those smaller rain events will not see the flooding as high because there's the space for the volume of water that's there. Same thing with up here. This is above the floodplain. So what we're gonna do by code, we have to raise the buildings a foot above the base flood elevation, which is a 100-year event, 1% chance storm. And so we need more dirt than we actually are filling in the floodplain in order to do that. So we're gonna take even more dirt than what we're filling so that we can get that done. So if you look real close here, this is the base flood elevation that we're showing on this drawing. This area here is going to be above the floodplain. It's that loop inside the blue line, the other little blue line. And if you look at the blue lines on West River Drive, it shows that West River Drive is below the base flood elevation already today. So how many times has that flooded? Probably not too much, but that's where we're at with the floodplain in this area. So the ground for these buildings will be high, and I don't believe that any of the buildings that we've ever designed in Plainfield Township, I've been working for Excel for 30 years, have ever flooded because we do that right. So that's floodplains and how that works. The other interesting thing with this job, and I'm falling in love with it more that I do it, is because they are building condominiums to try to work with the boat clubs that are here with the schools. They want this relationship together where they're going to advertise this as Grand River Boathouse Condominiums. They want to have that as part of the community, and they're not going to hide the fact that there's that activity that's going on nearby. It's also kind of a cool thing to be able to use the river. You talk about, you hear about they're opening up the rapids in downtown Grand Rapids. The same thing happens here in Plainfield Township with Rogue River, and now you're even adding things with the Grand River with some of the park systems that I've seen come through, and this will only add to that kind of a community. We've had meetings with the schools and their boat clubs. They're aware of what we're doing. They've written a letter of support. If you go through the packet, you can kind of see the other things that we're dealing with. I think that it's important to understand this is a very tight project from a cost standpoint. A few things that we have to do, we've been told that we should do and will do. One is provide a bike path that's all along West River Drive, all the way across the property. It's a lot of length when you're talking only a few units really in the end of scope of things. We're also going to need to loop water main through here. So things like that get done when you have projects here, and those will be gaps if something like this doesn't happen. And there's a lot of dirt to be moved. This is a very tight cost kind of job. So anyway, if we get approval here for rezoning, then we can move towards site plan, and the big part is to move through the EGLE for approval. We received that before. I worked on that when that did happen, and I don't think that we'll have a problem with getting that. but it is a process that will take a lot of time. We're looking to get rezoning and stuff under our belt so that we know what we're doing with EGLE is worthy of the effort, both for the EGLE review standpoint and from our side and my client spending the money to do that. So if you look at the site, we've got the buildings there, we've got a road with a looped end, we've talked to fire department, that's acceptable from a length standpoint. We've got the drive going over to the boathouse, and that will have a formal easement. If you're curious, this property is owned by the Road Commission, Kent County Road Commission, and they're kind of landlocked. Originally, they talked about having access to Conkle Drive, but that never happened. And so we'll work with them to make that happen, and I think this is going to be a great asset to the community, and I would love to see it happen. And so if you've got any questions, please let me know.
Okay, before I open it up, commissioners like to conduct a public hearing, hear from the public. At this time, I'll call the public hearing to order. If you would like to speak, come to the podium, state your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Diane Marklovitz. I live at 2594 Conkle, about a quarter of a mile upstream from this proposed development. I can appreciate the cut and fill concept, and I can tell you, as Mr. Elam has heard in the past, we do get affected by it. We used to be the last house on Conkle that would flood, and since the last Grand Rogue development has been created over by the Grand Rogue Park, we are now one of the first to flood with a 32-acre cut, a lake. Now, I see a little creek-like cut here. There's no way that can be adequate, and I would expect definitely. But anyway, I'm just here tonight to ask you not to change the zoning for 4 different main reasons. The first one is congestion at Jupiter and West River. Since I began working from my home 5 years ago, the fire trucks are nonstop. There's an accident continually. On this intersection at Karcher and West River, when the people are coming in to pick up their kids from the row club, there's congestion. Whenever the row club has a regatta, which they're not supposed to have, but they have a regatta, they will clog Conkle, literally our road where we can't get through. The Kent County Road Commission does own a little field behind our mailboxes where they're supposed to park, and they can park off the side. They park straight across the road. We have sharp curves. They park, and it's impassable. So congestion is a main concern for mine. As I mentioned, I'm also concerned about this cut. I don't feel that it's adequate for the amount of condos that you're putting in. There's a lot of fill there, and that has gotten wet up to West River there. Even in 2013, up to the corner, that was wet. There's a lot of fill that'll have to go in there. The other thing, my concern is the policy. The policy for flood mitigation in Plainfield Township has been set, and there's great concern about residents like myself living in the floodplain, living in the floodway. Yet we continue as a township to develop in the floodplain and floodway. So my concern is, why are we foregoing the policy that we've already set forth so that we could get the FEMA insurance and all the work that's been done there? I don't see how you're propelling that. You're stepping back from that. And my last concern is preserve. This is a rural preserve. It looks like a piece of scrap wood, but I have seen fox. I have seen deer. I have seen red-tailed hawk. I have seen owls in that space, because I do walk, I do enjoy the area that we live in. And so I'm concerned that with this development, you're impacting the local ecology that's already there as well. So for those reasons, I would ask you to consider to please deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else wish to address the commission?
Hey everybody, my name is Lisa Gordon. I live down on a Brigador Trail, which is downriver from this development.
Thank you, Diane. You actually said a lot of things that were actually the same thing that I'm going to say right now, is it will affect downriver. I'm very concerned about, if we look at this map, the level of fill. Again, Diane, thank you for pointing out that water does make it all the way up there. I'm also really concerned about this area right here, because we have another end of Conkle over here. So downriver, what we're talking about is just the base flood level, but we're not actually talking about the flow. So when water comes up, we're gonna see water come around here and hit Conkle, and that's gonna do damage to those existing houses that are already there. So I want you to really think about this flow and what it can do to the existing houses. So that's just one thing, right? So Diane already mentioned as well, we talk about eagles, we talk about the natural habitat, things that we're gonna take out. This is a beautiful wooded area. Absolutely beautiful. In fact, I can sit on Deb's deck and you can't even tell that Jupiter's here. It's absolutely beautiful little stretch. So to add condos to it are going to, one, add to light pollution, sound pollution, Diane, you already said that. Not to mention, if we have the retention pond, ultimately all that water still goes back into the river at one point or the other. Not to mention runoff usually includes gasolines, pollutants, those kind of things, cleaners. That's all coming back into the river. So if we are, again, talking about flood mitigation, talking about the environment, we're gonna have all of these effects, and it's just gonna be death by 1,000 cuts. We're just gonna continuously put water into the river, we're continuously filling in, and we're already trying to mitigate what's already there. So I ask too, in representation of all of our communities downriver from here, that we deny this. Okay?
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Jim Cullen. I'm a resident at 3861 Willow Drive, also along the Grand River, so I'm interested in this project. I would like to ask that the Planning Commission reject the rezoning request today instead of delaying it. I've read the staff memo and I understand their motion for postponement. They need more time to review it. It's that complicated. There are a lot of things going on, like the Eagle approval, the two-step rezoning, the floodplain considerations, multi-unit housing, and so on. But this area was zoned rural preservation for a reason. We need green space within our community. The area along the river is one of our best green spaces. This spot is an excellent example of what needs to be preserved. The project would change a country field into a swamp on one side and into high bluffs on the other. It completely changes its character as described. This project pushes a compressed development into a small corner of land. There are other areas throughout the township that can be utilized for this kind of development. If township zoning is to be respected, it can't shift areas around at each whim. Those of us who live along the river are used to having our rights limited when it comes to building on or modifying our own properties. We have accepted that there is a valid community consideration. The Planning Commission should also accept that the zoning as established is valid. Please don't second guess the current zoning. Sometimes it may be reasonable, but this is not one of those times. Let's not drag this out for the staff's sake, for the applicant's time, for the Planning Commission's time, and for those of us in the community who have to continue to show up to make our feelings known. Thank you.
Else at this time?
Hi, this is one way to kind of meet the neighbors. I've never met one neighbor.
Name and address.
Ted Corner. So I'm at 5966 West River, and Conkle is right behind me. So I bought that probably about 2.5 years ago before I knew what I was getting into with that property. And then we kind of like a little prematurely went, I came here and asked you guys, oh, are we able to build? Because I do own a little bit on Conkle. There's nothing on there. It's just there. And you guys are like, oh, absolutely not. It's preserved. That's wetland. There would be no building, So from what people said, yeah, I agree. It should continue and stay that way. I mean, there's a reason why you guys made it that way. And I get how you want to bring people into the neighborhood and, make this, use the Grand River and things like that. Well, the city, why does the city not own this? Make it into like a small park or something like that. But when I bought my house, and you guys denied that for building, and I'm like, why not? And then when I closed on that house, I had the seller, he gave me pictures that I'm still furious about it, but he gave me pictures, and the water was like 1 to 2 feet above my garage, and I'm thinking, how was I even able to buy this house? I was just so shocked and floored by these pictures. Believe me, I tried to look for them because I wanted to bring them here, but I'm sure you guys got stuff like that on the record. And then I asked him, I was like, were you able to drive through this, or were you able to get to your house? He goes, well, I kept the canoe up by West River and, went to my house in a canoe. It's ridiculous. So yeah, I feel so nervous right now, but I feel like I would just definitely not want to see this happen. It's a major flood thing, and I did hear a Brigadold Trail, from where you're from. My mom, she was a bus driver for Comstock Park for 40 years. She still drives, and they couldn't even drive down that. They had to the kids had to walk up, and so it's just. Yeah, it's a major flooding thing, and we might not have seen it in a couple years, but I think in just like a last year or two, I've seen it come over Conkle, and then my backyard is wet and flooded as well. So, we just asked you guys to really think about this and just do not be against this. Be against this, and do not pass it. So that's it. So great, thank you.
Thank you for being brave and coming up. Anyone else, please? Going once. Going twice. Hearing is closed. Thank you all who made comments. All right, this time I'll open it up to commissioners for discussion and questions of staff and a proponent. We'll start with Nancy.
No questions at this time.
So I probably addressed you on a couple of these questions. So the condos will actually sit higher than West River Drive, is that correct? Okay, so.
River Drive in front of there is within a foot of the floodplain, but it's below the floodplain, which is, when I say the floodplain, that's the base flood elevation is where you either are not required to have insurance through FEMA, or you're required to have insurance through FEMA. Base flood elevation is a 1% chance storm.
Okay, so the condos will actually sit up.
So building code for any residential needs to be at least a foot above the floodplain. So not only are they above the floodplain, but they're a foot above. So these don't have basements, they're slab on grade, they're a foot above. And I tell people build them 1.5 feet just because, get them above.
So the entry, the driveway coming in off of West River, that is in the floodplain.
Correct.
So in theory, these people may not be able to get to their condo at some point in time. Am I reading that correctly?
That is true.
Okay.
Base
So they
flood
could be-
elevation is a 1% chance storm, and West River Drive will be undrivable at that point too.
So if West River goes under, their entryway goes under. So they would be on an island. Okay. Peter, Eagle approval, are we spinning our wheels here, or are we? I mean, is that a fair question to ask of you? I mean, is there even a?
It's certainly your choice is chicken or an egg, but they want to be able, if they're going to go through the expense of doing a permitting project like this, which I can imagine is quite expensive, they want to have some surety before they do so. Just speaking off the cuff, one of the challenges would be, is we ultimately don't fully know what that Eagle permit's gonna require, so they may have to amend the plan. So this is truly a conceptual development plan that they would take to Eagle. Would probably be the maximum amount of use they could get out of the site.
And who maintains the gravel road going from the entryway all the way down to the rowing?
Well, as my understanding, and Rob can correct me on this, is that the developer or applicant in this case is planning on paving it or improving it. But right now, it is the consortium of the schools that are involved with that facility. And if you don't mind, I'll take a little bit just to talk about that whole thing.
Okay.
So we did meet with Rockford Schools, I think twice on this. One of our concerns, of course, was access, and there's going to be a railing on the edge of this drive, because you can see there's a fairly decent drop-off there. It does help consolidate their access. They don't truly have an access easement through this property right now, so that would be another thing that the applicant would be providing. The actual, as was talked about earlier, the actual access to this is actually under the Jupiter Bridge. There's a walk, kind of a pathway under there, at least last time I was there. It's been a while, but that would solidify that type of agreement. Now, Rockford Schools, and I may have the terminology wrong, but that lease agreement is with the township, and the township represents the property, and the road commission actually owns it. So, and that is up, I think, in 2005 for review again. So, some of those details would have to be worked out during site plan development if this project were to go forward.
That's all the questions I have right now.
About how many cubic yards will be involved in the cut and fill operation?
A good question. That's part of the stuff that we have to answer in that application. If I remember right from the last time that we did it, and I'm going to stress that I've already gotten this permit previously, but they never did all the work. They did the entrance drive, they did a little bit of stubbing of some of the water main and sanitary to the side of the road, but that permit was obtained. So I truly believe it's very possible to get this permit. At that time, I kind of remember the numbers of being 13,000 cubic yards. And I'll reiterate, the fill that's being placed is being moved from the cut area on the site. So we're not bringing in dirt, we're not mining dirt. We're using that dirt to balance the site just in a different format.
Said you would need additional dirt more than what you're cutting out, is that?
By rule, I am going to take more cut than fill because I need to raise the homes a foot above.
Okay, thanks for that answer. And I saw in one of the drawings that you're going to try and maintain as many trees or save as many trees as possible. With the cut and fill operation, especially with the work in the northeast corner, which is where you would really want the trees to remain, I don't see how that can happen. Could you explain that?
So I'll circle where I think the trees will stay. Up in the corner up here, and then through here, this little bit. We're trying to keep a nice buffer. And then along the valley here where we're not filling, we'll fill to the existing ground grade. So we're gonna try to shield, keep all those trees along the shore.
So that would be a 20 or 30 foot buffer for whatever trees you can save.
Correct.
Regarding the the boathouse, and I used to row crew myself on an eight-person. How are they going to be able to make those corners and get those boats in and out of that area with the road configured the way that it is?
We asked them how they want to have us touch their so this is the current drive.
Yes, yeah, I see the current drive.
They do turn 90 degrees there, but this is not much different. And I think they're going to really, in the end, kind of loop around. They said they didn't want to have the drive in front because when they pull boats out, they didn't want that traffic. But just as a personal side of things, I think that'll happen at times when there's not a lot of people around.
So that's kind of unresolved.
It's up to them. It's their property. We're bringing the drive back to their property. They can use it as which. One of the things they like too is we're going to bring sanitary sewer closer to them, and gas and electric and all those. Maybe they have electric already. Some of that stuff, because they're below the floodplain and they're not going to be raised above. We're not changing that ground, but they can only do so many things there. But one of their, I guess, dreams would be to have bathrooms there that were not just porta-johns. So some of that stuff also kind of can help out that community. It gets a lot closer to them.
And I guess my final question, and I don't think that there is an answer to this, but living in a condo myself, I wonder how people sitting on the back porch of those condos nearest the river are going to appreciate the parade of cars and boats and kids.
It's not as often as what, I mean, when you start listening to the schools, and that's one of the things in talking with them, we want the same communication going in. How much is there and stuff? They said they park, their intent is to park on the other side of West River Drive with most of the vehicles and then shuttle across during regatta type events. They said they have, I think, if you go through here, it's been a while since I read their letter, but I think 3 events a year that are larger. That we're actually facing these condos to look at the river as much as we can. These are the only 2 buildings that we could not get to do that. And that is the intent, is to have it look out over the river.
Thank you.
Dennis?
Based off your description of the floodplain mitigation, I have no questions.
Jack?
Peter, I have a question of you. Looking at the score, possible 27 points, I have some questions on the scoring of that, if you don't mind. Number 1 is significant preservation of large, continuous open spaces. I guess the word significant and large looms out to me. And you believe that this developer is doing significant and large preservation?
Second.
He got 1 point on that, the possible points of 3.
Which one is it?
4th from the bottom.
Yeah, it's not large. What we said, they are doing some preservation of here, so we gave them the base amount of points that they could do. It's not like they're not doing any at all with this, but we gave them 1 point consideration. But if they were doing a significant amount, as that says, then it would have been 3.
Okay, the last one, other benefits that would not otherwise be attained or feasible through conventional zoning, they got a 1. Could you explain that?
So we have been getting a lot of inquiries and direction from elsewhere in the community, in Ottawa, Kent counties, and the state at large, that we're not providing enough housing for the people that want to live here, and not just in Plainfield, but elsewhere. There is a limitation of affordable housing, even at entry level, working class, middle class, every echelon. And one of the things is that they are providing a need for the area, and as the master plan shows it in there, this is supposed to be mixed-use area. All right, so it's bringing people to the Belmont area to provide business to the stores and stuff that are there. That said, I also recognize that this may or may not, as we said in the staff report, be the best location because of the nature of the property. So that's why we gave them 1 out of the 3 there. So there's
Okay, all
back
right.
and forth.
Refresh my memory, didn't we have before us a year or so ago, down on West River, plans for a nursing home?
Yeah.
And didn't we have a problem at that point with traffic? How, and I'm not exactly remembering exactly where that is, but I'm looking at this and its proximity to the intersection of Jupiter and West River and wondering about that.
The traffic, this was over right by the old, it was Grand Isle Golf Course.
Yeah, the archival.
Yeah, it was archival, thank you. And
But the west side of archival.
Okay.
Traffic was not as big a problem with that particular location. There were some internal traffic flow issues with that site, the way they had that project laid out. And I think the main reason on that one was it just did not coincide with what we pictured as the master plan for that property when we rezoned it to PUD. It kind of was more of a recreational type of facility with some commercial.
All right. Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask the developer, do you have plans for low-income housing here?
These are townhouses. They're not low-income housing, if you define it as that, probably. Kent County does have a report that's coming out, and maybe it's released now, but it's been released to a lot of the developers around town, where there's like 24,000 homes that they figure they need in the next few years that are short around here. And everything, has a place, but as people move out of some of those low-income housing into a place like this, maybe those places open up for somebody else. And this is a site that I don't think really fits low-income housing. That's not the community that we're looking for in this place, and I don't think that's what Plainfield's looking for. But it is housing in Plainfield, and it's a tight community from an end of the footprint is a lot smaller for that amount of units compared to single-family houses. Look at the preserve over along the Grand River or something like that, and what the space is for 38 units out there compared to this is quite different. And if you're looking at the point system, one of the things that I don't think we found a home for in the point system for the PUD, I'll just let's throw this out there too, because it's a huge expense, is running the oversized water main across the whole frontage here is a big dollar. And that is something that, in my mind, doesn't serve just this community. It's oversized. It's something that Plainfield Township benefits as a whole with, and it's a gap in their system. So we didn't really find a home for that as one of the point things, but please note that that's one of the benefits of having this community here, if there's a home for that point. But there you go.
I appreciate your comments on that. I've come into this with very mixed feelings, and I still have very mixed feelings. Part of the problem, frankly, is development in the floodplain, and we have been very clear about not wanting development in the floodplain. Now, I understand you're building it up, and some of the other homes in the floodplain are not built up like they should be. It's unfortunate, but that's one thing. I continue to wrestle with the traffic flow, and this, how far would this driveway be from the corner of Jupiter and West River?
It's an existing driveway. It's been approved by the road commission. They chose that spot. We're not moving it. It was built to size for, it was gonna be an office. I think there were like 4 buildings in there. And that drive is acceptable for, it's actually less use with 38 condos than if it was an office complex.
Okay,
And if you're looking at where the drive is, the trick is pulling left out of there. Right is perfect because it's got the light there and traffic will stop without having a bunch of gaps, and that's where you're gonna be able to have the benefit. If you have somebody real tight, that doesn't like turning left there are ways to go around to the right. But that is, it's West River Drive. And when you look at West River Drive, if you look at that as the only reason, you could go up and down this street all over the place and go, why are we, you're adding this kind of development there all the time. And so the road commission is the one that ultimately has the say on whether or not it's safe or not. And that they have this as the location and they've accepted this as its design. It's lined up with the one across the road. That's always what they look for.
Okay.
It's a light nearby. You can see the light of what it is from the spot. It's there if you want to drive it. I mean, check it out.
Well, I drive down West River all the time, and I know at 55 miles an hour, if that light is green, it's going to be really tough. If it's red, sometimes the traffic backs up, and I was just curious as to whether that traffic would back up to that drive or not, and I'm not really sure.
Oh, it should be fine there.
Chair, if I may take this a moment, the YouTube audience has reminded me, and I probably was guilty of this too, when people are not speaking, make sure your mics are turned off. I guess they're getting some feedback on the YouTube audience out there, so just a reminder.
Jack, anything else?
No, thank you.
Back to Nancy.
I'm all set.
Can I just make a couple comments? Jack, just low-income housing, I get there's a need for that, but I think you're right in the fact that this is not the location for low-income housing, regardless of anything else, only because there is no bus line. And most low-income housing would want to be put where public transportation is. So even if you wanted to put it here, it would not be the right location for that. Yeah.
I was not advocating for it so much as we had a letter from a resident who had talked about that, and I just wanted to bring it up as an item that was in that letter.
Yeah. And the only other thing, I think we addressed density at sort of the beginning of this conversation, and that takes me back to the reimagined Plainfield. What was the one thing they said that Plainfield Township lacks for growth? Density of housing, because we have too many large lot areas, and that density is sort of what we need to do. Now, maybe not here, but in general. So that was just a thought I had.
I too, Jack, have tension on this development. I've served on the floodplain committee now for 3 years. I'm going off, sorry, but that you're gonna get Dennis moving forward, because they made me vice chair of this auspicious group. And so we divvy up our duties, and in watching that group work as hard as they have on updating the plan, and we're close to getting that finished. We got new floodplain maps, and the good work that you have done and the township has done to mitigate for the flooding that's gonna occur now and into the future along this watershed. So I just want you to know I have mixed feelings too, and we'll be struggling with a final decision on this when we come to that. At this point, we're being asked to take a motion to postpone this till the next meeting, and is there a motion to do that?
I move that the Planning Commission postpone the application for the Jupiter condominium rezone request to the March 28, 2023 Planning Commission meeting.
Support?
Second.
Support second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, at this point, any staff, or I'm sorry, yeah, staff comments, you're singular tonight, so.
We are working on the master plan update, scheduling a meeting for April. We haven't finished the dates yet on that, but we're getting close to that, so we can kick that off with our first meeting and workshops. The other thing I wanted to introduce to you, and I had some requests over the years, and I had one specific gentleman ask me, wedding halls and event center types of things, retreats in the rural preserve rural estate. I'll be bluntly honest with you, I have mixed feelings on them. I've seen them be very nice assets to the community, and I've been seeing them be detriments. Did a little bit of calling around to some other communities, and they did say to me, if you were to permit those, make sure you have lots of good conditions. So that would be where we would start from. But I wanted to get just a general feel from you guys, if you thought that was something that we should explore, or if you feel that there's just too much nuisance and too many negative impacts from that type of use out there. So that's my thoughts on that. And then just if you have, feel free to touch base with me later, or if you have some comments tonight, let me know.
I just, if we're gonna have conversations in the back, can we step out into the hallway, please? Is the meeting still going on? Thank you.
Peter, question, is your question whether we would consider the wedding event reception hall generally or specifically in rural preserve areas?
Rural preserve and rural estate.
Specifically in-
Yeah,
okay.
probably primarily rural preserve, yes.
Okay, great, thank you, just wanted to clarify.
Peter, thank you. Anything from planning commissioners? Let's go. Brian?
Peter, the development on East Belt Line just south of 5 Mile, the apartments went in. They were supposed to, the original plan was for a office building up front. Is that still the plan? Is there a timeline on that?
Yep, they came in about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago with a revised plan.
Okay.
For that. They will have a mixed office manager and then a couple, they're looking at doing a 4 small unit, single, kind of a neat idea. 4 single unit, 1 bedroom, a little apartments, so.
So it's
yes.
changed from what original, but we don't,
Well, their agreement with the neighboring property to get access from Pine Forest was they had to have 1 office, and as part of the PUD, they have to have an office. So we'll primarily be office, but.
okay. Okay, I noticed the apartments seemed to be done. I just wondered if they were gonna start work on.
They've been hemming and hawing, and what to do.
Just back to that event hall area idea, what's the current status in the township of what is available to the community for that type of event?
Well, we have some commercially zoned properties. The Gilmore Collection just bought Ramona's Terrace, English Hills, different names. That would be a location. There's certainly probably other locations within the township that double up. This gentleman was talking more like a hybrid where you could have a small wedding, you could have a retreat, you could have Cub Scouts get there, those types of things. So in some ways it'd be multi-function. Of course, wedding services are, a little bit different, but.
The value of doing it in a rural preserve area or rural area is literally just the beautiful neighborhood instead of
It's
other office
recreational
buildings and
amenities.
commercial
Yeah, it's
places.
the environment, it's location.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
Jack, anything else?
I have nothing, no, thank you.
Dennis?
When it comes to the wedding venue in the rural areas, I've seen a lot of creativity when it comes to those events. So I'm not opposed to that, obviously context and stipulations dependent, but I'm not opposed to it.
I have no other comments.
Nothing more here, so I guess we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Good job, Vice Chair.